Hey guys, I just want to say there's a lot of racism going on towards Asian and Asian American people because of COVID-19, and it's really making it hard to be Asian. So I'm just gonna stop now. So
Now, because of what's going on, the there's a backlash against Asian Americans. And I met so many wonderful Americans on the Yang Gang that are Asian descent. And, I had a one incident, one incident when I was in California where actually a black gentleman was yelling at my Asian Yang Gang brother about him being Asian. And I was like, "What's the problem?" He's like, "He's Asian." And I was like, "I love Asians." It was messed up. And, I was like, "You should understand, you're a minority." But he obviously didn't. And it just the fact that, our Asian brothers and sisters, fellow Americans, are getting any kind of backlash or discrimination right now is just heartbreaking. And anything we can do on the Yang Gang to support um, you know everyone on the Yang Gang, and just in general, uh, I will I'm first to try to step up and like defend somebody who's being picked on in any way. That's just who I am. But it's hard to do when you're by yourself in the house. But everyone is deserving of respect, obviously. So hopefully, we can help through our message, through our prayers, through our communication, help. I wanted to cover that. And then I'm going to try this clip from Pageant because Andrew did an op-ed about this actual issue. And me and her don't agree with Andrew actually on this point. So I'm going to play this. Hopefully it plays. Let me know if you hear the audio at this point. Okay, hold on.
Hey guys, so you remember when Andrew Yang said that it would be really weird if everyone agreed with him about everything? Yeah, basically this is one of those times. We all see how violence against Asian Americans has increased ever since this crisis has started. Apparently in California, there's been over 100 assaults reported every single day against Asian Americans, which is absolutely nuts because we are one of the bluest, most liberal states in the country who has the biggest population of Asian Americans. And a little bit about my background for those of you who do not know, I am Korean American. I was born and grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in a predominantly white area, so I am not unfamiliar with the taunts and bullying. I had to grow up with it every single day. And then I went to college at UC Berkeley where I was among my own kind. And I know it just sounds so corny, but for the first time in my life, I actually felt like I actually knew what it was like to immediately belong. And honestly, I think nearly every single ethnic person can relate to that, can relate to being with people who look like you and what that means in terms of immediately feeling comfortable in your own skin. But fast forward to today, where I do not any longer live in the majority. I live in Los Angeles, where Asian Americans make up about 15% of the population, probably a little bit more. And today is scary times even here. The number of attacks against Asian Americans, you guys all see it in the news and on Twitter. You see the videos of people just getting attacked in the streets. My own friends, they're afraid to go out by themselves. They feel like they need to go out with someone else in fear that they're going to be randomly attacked by some unhinged person. It really reminds me of what it was like in high school, except in high school, I was personally raised to always stand up for myself. So even though I got those taunts and I got the bullying from the uneducated, white kids in my school, I always stood up for myself. I was always prepared to stand up for myself. I did not give people free passes to walk all over me. Although I totally understand that the vast majority of people were not brought up that way. They simply did not know any better because their parents didn't know any better. Their parents didn't even have that choice to be able to stand up for themselves because they were so greatly outnumbered. But here's the thing. With everything that is going on right now, the very last thing that I want to do is apologize for being Asian American. I am not going to do it, and I am not going to operate as though I need to do that. So some of you guys might have seen that there was this article written by Andrew Yang on the Washington Post. Andrew Yang, we Asian Americans are not the virus, but we can be part of the cure. Now, the first part of the article, it was very, very, earnest in terms of talking about how he has even felt threatened, and I mean, he was a presidential candidate, right? He's a high profile person. He is a grown man, and how in New Hampshire, someone yelled out, a slur from the window of his car and everything like that. And I was like, you know what, this resonates, this hits home, but then the problem that I guess I had with it is the end part of it. Now, I don't know how many guys actually read this, but this is what struck me as something that I just do not agree with, right? And I'm just going to explain why I don't agree with it. It says here that people are hurting. They look up and see someone who is different from them, whom they wrongly associate with the upheaval of their way of life. Natalie Chow, a UCLA basketball player, said that she felt better when she wore her UCLA gear, in part because the association reminded people that she was an American. During World War II, Japanese Americans volunteered for military duty at the highest possible levels to demonstrate that they were Americans. Now, many in the Asian American community are stepping up, trying to demonstrate that we can be part of the solution. Some 17% of U.S. doctors are Asian and rushing to the front lines. This is no place for an Asian doctor joke. We Asian Americans need to embrace and show our Americanness in ways we never have before. We need to step up, help our neighbors, donate gear, vote, wear red, white, and blue, volunteer, fund aid organizations, and do everything in our power to accelerate the end of this crisis. We should show without a shadow of a doubt, that we are Americans who will do our part for our country in this time of need. Demonstrate that we are part of the solution. We are not the virus, but we can be part of the cure. Now, here's the thing. Look, I supported him as a candidate. There is no one else like him who was even coming close to presenting the kind of solutions that he has. He has completely changed the conversation of politics, like single-handedly. His campaign has done that, and he is going to be one of the great minds of the 21st century who people will come to for practical, real, implementable solutions. So I largely agree with the vast majority of the solutions, but I disagree with his solution to this one, and I'm going to tell you why. Waving a white flag and surrendering to the hate while claiming innocence, it is not the way to see progress. We have done that for decades as Asian Americans. We have been subservient, understanding, and complacent for decades. It started with the Chinese railroad workers in the 1860s, and then we wound up in internment camps in the 1940s. And of course, this reminds me of an incident that happened back in 1982. Now, some of you might be familiar, but in the late 1970s, early 1980s, there was an oil embargo crisis in the United States where basically people had to line up in order to fill up their tank. Gas prices skyrocketed, and people were starting to turn to Japanese imports because they were more fuel efficient instead of the American-made cars like Chrysler, GM, Ford. And as a result, all these auto manufacturers in Detroit, Michigan had to lay off thousands of workers. And of course, because they were Japanese cars, Japanese import cars, these are cars, not people, people turned their hatred toward the Japanese and by consequence, Asian Americans. Does that sound familiar at all? And this led to the death of Vincent Chin in 1982. On the eve of Vincent's wedding, he went to a strip club with his friends and two other white men. One of them was just laid off, from his manufacturing job. They got into an altercation and they pointed at Vincent Chin and they said, "It's because of you, Jap MFers that I'm out of a job." And then once they left the club, they went on their way, except those two white guys, they hunted down Vincent Chin and his friend. They found him in a McDonald's parking lot and they beat him to a pulp. Vincent Chin died on the eve eve of his wedding for no fault whatsoever of his own. In fact, he was actually an engineer working at Ford during this time, and those two guys got off with $3,000 fines each and 3 years probation for literally killing another human being. Being quiet and submissive while hoping for social respect is simply not the answer here. It is a slippery slope that I do not want to travel down, and it has not led us to good results so far. The only way that anyone even gives a crap about us is that we are loud enough for people to even pay attention to in the first place. If we can't even fight for our rights and show that we can fight for our rights, how do we expect anyone else to do that for us? And look, I hate making this comparison, but it's as absurd as saying to an African American person, hey, look, you need to wear red, white, and blue to show your Americanness and show that you're on our white people's side in order for us to not hurt you or have prejudice against you. Just, make yourself as inconspicuous as possible and maybe people will like you. So I'm going to say to all my Asian American people out there, do not feel any more responsibility to prove your Americanness during a time like this, to have to feel like you need to prove your innocence when you are not guilty of anything. Look, I was born here. I'm a citizen. I pay my taxes. I have lived here my entire life. And here's the thing. This isn't to say that you should just throw caution to the wind. You shouldn't arm yourself. You shouldn't, adequately prepare yourself for any attacks or anything like that and play it safe. But it is to say that walking around like you owe anyone an apology for your existence is something that I am not willing to do, and I don't think that you should ever be willing to do. And here's the thing. I don't care if you're white, if you're black, if you're brown, if you're Asian, if you somehow think because I am Asian that I need to prove my innocence to you, that I owe you an apology, that I owe you anything more than anyone else would ever owe you, then you must be out of your damn mind. We have an equal right to humanity, and I am not putting mine second to anyone else's. We all have an equal right to be patriotic. We all have an equal right to participate in this country's democracy. So yeah, I'm just being real, you guys. Like, I simply do not agree with his solution part of this article. I just think it sounds way too, apologetic for even just being Asian American. Like somehow we need to further prove our Americanness, as opposed to, wait, maybe we should be talking about Asian Americans in a different kind of way in the media. Maybe we need to, beef up the representation of Asian Americans. That was one of the great things about his candidacy, is I was like, wow, this is one of the best things that's happening for Asian Americans in this country because of the representation. But basically, just kind of cowering and say come on, I'm American, please, look, I'm wearing a flag is just really just not my bag. It's not my style. It's not how I think. It's not how I think anyone in this country should ever think about their racial identity, if I'm being quite honest. But I know a lot of people. I know a lot of you guys. There are a lot of people out there who, whenever anyone disagrees with Andrew Yang on anything, they will jump in and try and attack you and everything. I'm totally expecting that, by the way. But let me know if you disagree with me or if you agree with me, or you can see both sides. Like Andrew Yang says, if everyone agreed with everything that I said or he said, it would be really, really strange. But I'm going to be honest, I don't see how you can see it any other way than how I laid it out. I just cannot see eye to eye with Andrew on this one. I completely respect him coming out and talking about the fact that it is difficult to be an Asian American during a time like this, and talking about those real experiences, standing up for yourself and being strong and being a strong representative of your own, race or ethnicity. It doesn't mean that you can't be vulnerable and share those moments of vulnerability, right? My friends have done that with me, but it does not mean that we should be cowering, away from our identity because we have something to feel sorry about, when it's just simply how we were born and we are fully American and we pay our freaking taxes just like anyone else. And we have the same right to the air and water and everything in this country as anyone else does. So that I have to draw the line there. It's simply not something that I can get on board with. I just hope that other Asian Americans who do look up to Andrew Yang, like you should look up to him as far as, how incredibly smart he is. He's one of the great thinkers, of our century. But I will say that I'm not sure that you need to take his cue when it comes to how you should see your own identity within this crisis. I think that you should be as proud as anyone else in this country to be American, to be whoever you are, right? And not feel like you ever need to prove yourself. Do not feel like you need to prove yourself, because you absolutely 150, 200% do not need to prove yourself. You are a human being. We all have shared humanity. We would never be saying any of this to any other race in this country. So I'm not sure why Asian Americans have to be the exception, and why we have to bow down to stuff that other, ethnicities and races simply are not ever asked to do. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, that is my take on the whole thing.
So that was Paget talking about an op-ed that Andrew did. And basically, Andrew was talking about how Asian Americans need to step up and represent as Americans because of the backlash, and be like the examples, be the leaders, be the solution. I understand probably where he's coming from. He's being aspirational, and he's trying to, create like a leadership type of vibe. But at the same time, hey, thanks. So at the same time, I feel Andrew in the op-ed altogether is too passive. And he proved that on the debate stage when it came down to it. He did not attack anyone. Okay. And there's a way to attack people with style. Kind of like there's a way to do it, but he doesn't seem like a fighter. And he said that he didn't care about being in a Joe Biden administration, but when it came down to it, he wasn't willing to take down Joe Biden or anybody else. And that came through in the op-ed too. Instead of being a fighter and standing up for himself and his, the community in large, he kind of took a passive stance. Instead of fighting, it's not fighting. It's just passively showing who you are. And I don't agree with that. You should be proud of who you are, and you should fight for truth, justice, and the American way. So that's what I have to say about that.
Don't be a racist. Don't get mad at a Chinaman just 'cause he's got a cough. If you don't think I should say Chinaman, well, you can just go find another friend. Stop being mean to Asians, leave them the hell alone. If you keep being racist, then we'll never make another iPhone. So don't be a racist.
Hey, thanks guys for joining me on my channel. Just remember, I do have Facebook, I have Twitter and Instagram. My Instagram got messed up, I'm rebuilding it, but also have Yang Yacht 2020 if you want to check out just exclusively Andrew Yang stuff. That's on Instagram. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and just be kind out there. And we should really be coming together to help each other and not tear each other down right now. So take care, everyone.